And a prenuptial agreement, the way I would describe it, is two people deciding that they, having picked each other out of 8 billion people to choose from in the world, are in a better position to make the rules that will govern the economics of their relationship than the legislature would be, than politicians would be. And anyone who's ever been to the Department of Motor Vehicles or who's ever been to, any government agency, very rarely would you interact with a government agency and go, we should definitely put these people in charge of our family life. Like, they're gonna do a great job. They're really crushing it, Like, that's not something yet most people who are married have almost no idea what legal rights and obligations were conferred on them by getting married. They just have no idea. It's the most legally significant thing they're going to do in their life other than die. And they have no idea what their rights and obligations are. And those rights and obligations can change. So like politics and the legislature and the way that rules that govern the spousal support rights, child support rights, the division of property, those are subject to change by government change. So, for example, in the United States, alimony, spousal support, maintenance, whatever we want to call it, which is a payment a person makes to their spouse when there's been an economic disparity in the marriage and now they're getting divorced. That used to be tax deductible. It used to have no formula. It was at the discretion of a judge. Then in 2016, Trump came into office and he said, yeah, I'm not letting it be tax deductible anymore. So completely changed. Now, you're already married at this point. And now the rules about what governs your marriage have changed. So there aren't a lot of contracts in the world that people could enter into that the terms could wildly change due to circumstances beyond your control, and you're still in that same contract. So prenuptial agreements are designed for two people who at that moment have an abundance of affection for each other. If they didn't, then there's no reason that they should be getting married, that they make up a rule set that's going to govern their relationship.
And that typically, as we see it in movies and such, and we hear about it in culture, is really deciding who gets what when they break up, right?
Correct. Now, it's hard to say in advance who gets what when we break up sometime in the future, because we don't know what we're going to have in 10 years, in 20 years. So what do? You create structures. Like you create, I refer to the simplest prenup as a yours, mine, and ours, which is if it's in my name, whether it's an asset or a liability, it's mine, free from any claim by you, free from any obligation to you. If it's in your name, it's yours, free from any claim by me, any obligation to me. Ours, if it's in our joint names, then we're equally responsible for it if it's an obligation, or we equally are entitled to half the value of it if it's an asset. That, to me, just creating those three buckets. Now, here's the problem. You create those three buckets, you both sign off on it, and you get married. You can't just set it and forget it now. You actually have to have conversations with this person that you're married to, which theoretically you should be able to do, right? Like if you've decided this is gonna be my primary relationship, this is the person I'm gonna tie my destiny to, you should be able to talk about, hey, I just got this big bonus at work. I'm gonna put this much in my sole account and I'm gonna put this much in the joint account. And then you should be able to say, if you're the other person, well, why are you putting so much of it in your personal account? Like, are things weird with us or something? Or is there, have some conversation, again, about why are we marrying? It's that economy concept, which is, look, what do I owe you if I marry you? I'd like to know that in advance. Because people say to me all the time, well, I married this person and when we got married, he had nothing. He had nothing, and he built his business while he was married to me. And I was very, there for him while he was building it. So therefore, I believe I'm entitled to half the value of that business. Now, that's a logical argument. I don't know that I agree with it, but it's logical. But keep going with that logic, right? So if that was true, and I built this business and my wife, who was married to me while I was building that business, she helped make that. Okay, well, her mother and father helped make who she is. So I owe them something, right? Because if they hadn't done what they did, I wouldn't have her. And if I didn't have her, I wouldn't have my business. So how much do I owe them? And now that I think about it, her grandmother definitely influenced who her mother was, which influenced who she was, which influenced what she did for me. So just can you let me know in advance how far down the chain do I owe people and how much do I owe them? They can't all get half. So did they get half of the half of the half? Or do I, like, and if this is the logic that we're going to follow, then I would like to know in advance what that is, because there are no other transactions where if you went in to purchase a car and you said, how much is this car? And they said, money. And you said, well, how much? It's a good amount. Okay, again, we just keep talking in abstractions. I'd like to know, what does this add up to? How much is it? And even if you can't make it a dollar number, it's X percent of last year's earnings, or like give me a formula, something to tie it to, and at least have that conversation, because then you can decide, am I going to sign up for this thing or not?
You must meet a lot of people who are in a relationship where one of the people doesn't want to have a prenup.
Yes.
Because when I think about having a prenup, I'm with a woman at the moment. We've been together for 5 years. Frankly, if I said to her, I want to get a prenup, she would be all for it. That's the type of person she is. She would be all for it.
Then.
Doesn't care. She'd be all for
Excellent.
it. Excellent.
You've done well.
But I can imagine in other relationships, I'd be nervous to even say the words, because immediately you're thinking about how you're getting out before you get in.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to that. There's a lot to unpack there. So the first thing I would say is, all marriages end. They end in death or they end in divorce, but they all end, right? And so if you said, I'm going to get life insurance, it would be foolish for someone who's with you to say, wait, are you planning on dying soon? No, but in the event that I do, I'd like to make sure that things are taken care of in a certain way. And in the event that I do, there's going to be enough things to be upset and sad about for the people around me. So I'd like them to have one less thing, and I also know that there's a possibility. I hope I won't, but there's a possibility that I'm going to die in an hour. So I'd really hope it doesn't happen, but I can't say it's definitely not going to happen. So divorce, when we look at statistics like that, it's okay to say, hey, look, you know what? I hope this never happens. But if it did, what do we owe each other? What would you need? Like, it's not just a conversation about what do I want to keep? What am I entitled to keep? It's also, well, what would you need?
Have you seen it break down a marriage because someone mentioned a prenup? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen marriages that were scheduled to happen not happen because the prenup discussion happened. But more often than not, I've seen the threat of not marrying someone because they want you to sign a prenup cause a person to fold in their request for a prenup, which to me is a really bad start for a marriage. So I've had a lot of clients who come in, say, look, I want to have a prenup. I have a lot of confidence in this marriage. I really love this person, but I would like to, have a prenup in place. And I draft a prenup for them, and it has reasonable terms, and they give it to their fiance, and their fiance says, yeah, I'm not signing that. It's not happening. And instead of saying, okay, then you're choosing for us to not marry, that's okay. But I love you and I'd love to marry you, but this is something that I need in order to feel comfortable with that. They just go, okay, yeah, never mind. And they walk away from it. And because they're intimidated. And I think that's an awful way to start a marriage. I think that's much worse than having a discussion about difficult things. I don't think you would think it's irresponsible. You've been with a woman for 5 years to say to her, let's say a year ago, or let's say 4 years ago, to say to her, we're going to get in a fight sometime. That's going to happen. We're going to disagree about something. It'll probably be my fault. I'll probably say something stupid. I do that sometimes. So when we get in a fight someday, which again, I hope we don't, I'll do everything I can to not ever get in an argument with you. But at some point, you're going to say something, it's going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to take it the wrong way. I'll say something, you'll take it the wrong way. Or maybe I'm just an idiot. Sometimes I'll be in a bad mood and I'll say something, or I'll have had too many drinks and I'll say something to you and upset you. When that happens, how do you like to fight? What's best? Do you need a minute? Do you need a minute to calm down? Do you need to sleep on it? Or do you need to we got to fix this right now. I can't go to bed angry. I won't be able to sleep. I won't be able to function. Do we have to address it right then and there? Because the best time to talk about how we're going to argue? When we're not arguing. The worst time to learn how to fight? In the middle of a fight. That's the worst time to learn how to fight. So I like a prenup. I think a prenup can be a very romantic thing because it's basically saying, look, I love you, you love me, we want this thing to work, or else we wouldn't be signing up for it. But in the event it breaks down, you have a right to know what you're entitled to. I have a right to know what I'm entitled to. We both have an interest in making sure that we both have the things we need so that neither of us feels like we're crawling out of this relationship instead of walking out of it. Like if I lose you, I'm gonna have a lot more to be sad about than my stuff. But boy, let me tell you, not knowing where I'm gonna live or how I'm gonna pay my bills, that's gonna add a layer of pain and complexity to what is undoubtedly gonna be a really hard situation. So let's take that off of each other. Let's know that, because I don't ever want the person who lays their head on the pillow next to me to be there because they don't wanna get divorced. I would rather that it be that they like having me there next to them, that their life is better because I'm there, that they feel like I bring value to their life and they bring value to mine. Not, well, I don't want to go through all that.
In that case of that person you referenced there, where they came to you for a prenup, their partner gave them an ultimatum and said, listen, no, I'm not signing that. How do you kind of draw the line between being a lawyer versus like a therapist or an advisor, sort of like a relationship advisor?
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, it's a very seamless, I don't think it's easy to distinguish between, we're attorneys and counselors at law. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I think I use it as much as I use my law degree because this is so personal that it's very hard to not give human advice while I'm giving legal advice. And I'm dealing in the clay of human emotion and human connection and human frailty and human emotional complexity.
I thought prenups were illegal. I thought they were like people went and got them, but when it comes to
enforcement,
they don't hold up.
It could be true in the UK, but certainly not in the USA. They are enforceable. They are binding. Sometimes they're crazy how enforceable they are.
Oh, really?
Because the nature of a prenup is, as long as it was not what's called unconscionable. Unconscionable is a contract that is so unfair that no fair dealing person would offer it and no sane person would accept it. So that's what unconscionability is. So you have to a contract has to be unconscionable for it to be set aside, okay? Now, I have seen some prenups that were in their interpretation unconscionable, meaning, at the time they entered into it, he had nothing and she had nothing. And now they're getting divorced, and under the terms of this, he's going to walk out with $100 million and she's going to walk out with almost nothing. But as long as it was not unconscionable at the time it was made, if it's unconscionable in its performance, it's still binding. So I have seen the outcome of prenups sometimes be shockingly unfair, but you have a right to contract as long as it wasn't fraud, as long as it wasn't duress or undue influence, or if someone was under the influence of drugs or alcohol when they signed off on it. It's a binding contract because we believe in human autonomy and agency and the right to make decisions about your life and your future. So
is that example real? And is that the most shocking one you've seen?
No, the most shocking prenup I've ever seen, which was enforceable, had a provision that said that for every 10 pounds the wife gained in the marriage, she would lose $10,000 a month in alimony.
10 pounds of weight?
Yes. So it was a very wealthy man who was marrying a very attractive woman. But he was very concerned that she was going to become less attractive and he was going to become more wealthy. So his solution to this was in the prenuptial agreement. He wanted a clause that said she would get, if they divorced, she was going to get like $70,000 a month for alimony. But for every 10 pounds she gained from the date of marriage, she would forfeit $10,000 a month worth of alimony. And it was designed to sort of create an incentive that she would remain thin. And that was enforceable, meaning they tried to challenge and set aside that provision. And the court said, this is a disgusting provision. I don't know why you married this person, but it's enforceable. It's a contract. The two of you signed it, and you had a right to sign it, and you agreed to these rules, and they may be ridiculous rules, but you agreed to them, and you have a right to do that.